Alright, hello everybody, and welcome to more LSR League Racing action here on F1 22. Of course, thanks for joining us on this fine Sunday afternoon or evening. Some of you might notice we're a little bit earlier than normal, but of course we do have to account for daylight savings time, so of course where it's the normal start time for anybody in the US, might be a little bit earlier for some of those in Europe and in plenty of other places around the world. But of course, thank you for joining us regardless. Got some league racing action for you today around Austria. Of course, you've got both Mercedes and the Haas car of Dodaligo coming out to start this qualifying session, so should be getting underway shortly. But again, welcome here to round 6. Of course, this is Group 2's 6th round, I believe, if my math is correct. Of course, going to be hoping for a very interesting race here today around Austria. Of course, very short track, 36. Going to have 36 laps, only 10 turns, but should provide plenty of constant action. Of course, yellow flag there. That's for a Mercedes spun round. I believe that was Viperize trying to get those tires lit up as quickly as possible. Just had a spin there. But of course, we're going to be sitting on board with Dodaligo as he goes. The Haas car will likely be the first to be completing a qualifying lap. So we'll stay on board. Of course, coming over the hill into turn 9 and 10, especially on that out lap and that setup lap, it's really important to still get turns 9 and 10 right, because it's very easy to invalidate out of those corners. But of course, there's this run up the hill into turn 1, fairly hard braking zone. Going to want to go down into about 4th gear in through there. Got to be careful of that sausage curb on the outside, and of course got the first of 3 DRS straights on this lap. You got that slight left kink that is technically turn 2, and then a very hard braking zone here in turn 3, where we're likely to see plenty of overtaking opportunities. Of course, a very important traction zone out of there as you make the run now down into turn number 4. We've seen numerous incidents here of cars battling side by side, banging of wheels and cars going out into that gravel you can see on the left. Of course, going to be, of course, another good overtaking spot. The more technical section, a little bit wide there from the Haas. Turns number 5, 6, was it 8. Of course, now got the run down into turns number 9 and 10. Want to be really careful. Switching the cars on pit entry there. Just want to use all the track there to the left. And of course, just keep it neat and tidy out of that final corner. Don't leave it behind. Sets the benchmark of a 106.6. So that's going to be the time that all of our drivers are going to be chasing. Kevin Cal for Mercedes with a bit of a slower time with a 108.7 there as his first lap time. Possibly a mistake earlier on there, as we see the Albrecht driving for Red Bull today go to the top with a 105.4. So that's quite a solid lap time for the Red Bull driver. And Viperize just goes that slight bit quicker and is able to jump up into provisional pole. I believe it'll be Williams next across the line, either a Williams or an Alpine, who's just starting a lap, as is the AlphaTauri of Fedora, who's doing much the same. So a number of drivers still starting laps. Of course, we got Zersity coming to the line now. He'll go 3rd fastest for the moment. The second Haas of Kevprod is just starting his lap, so we'll have to keep an eye on his lap time. Of course, we got Jonah, Formula Jonah, with a 116.1, so potentially just a setup lap there from one of the 2 Aston Martin cars. So it's going to be interesting to see there, though Jonah invalidates there at the exit of turn 1, so probably not the last time we're going to see that today. Of course, Crooner, definitely one of the heavy favorites to win this race today, up there with the Alpine of Bamboo Vegas. Of course, we did have Zayek winning. If you want to get caught up on the previous races, they're all in the live tab on our YouTube channel, but just to give you an idea of what the drivers' standings look like at the moment. Of course, you got Bamboo Vegas currently driving for Alpine in the line to take provisional pole position with a 105.184. The Alpine driver currently sits at the top of the driver's standings, 13 points clear of the Mercedes of Kevin Cal, who currently sits second. James 443 for Aston Martin. After a couple of strong showings, especially in the race, going largely from the back and picking up podiums, if I'm not mistaken, in back-to-back races. Certainly, he's podiumed in China and in Zandvoort, but some very strong showings puts that Aston Martin third, just 1 point adrift of Kevin Cal at the moment, as there's a purple Sector 2 there, though that might just be for a personal best sector time. Of course, some other drivers in there. Alexis Beast currently sitting fourth. Of course, Alexis not apparently able to join us quite yet. Of course, you got Viperize as well sitting in fifth. Dodoligo then sits sixth with Zayak, Kevprod, and Kruner, who certainly has some pace, but just has had a number of unlucky experiences, as James with a 107.5 there. Where will Fiery Vulcan come in? And as he comes to the line, he will go seventh quickest with a 106.5. Here comes Kevprod out of the final corner, and he will come to the line. He will go fifth fastest. There's an Alfa Romeo right behind him, and it's Omega, who will only go 10th quickest for the moment with a 106.7 flat. So certainly a number of drivers starting to put their first lap times on the board. Of course, you can see Kruner there diving into the pit lane, trying to see if anybody here is on a push lap. It doesn't appear to be anybody on a push lap quite yet. Of course, going to be looking at a number of drivers to improve, but again, very easy to invalidate here. Very short lap, which means you have to make all that count. You can certainly get another run of things if things don't work out. Of course, there's Kevin Cal for the Mercedes, and then a quick update on the constructors' standings as well. Of course, thanks to both Kevin Cal and Viperize's strong showings, Mercedes is currently the constructors' standings leaders, leading by 21 points from the Alpine pairing of Bamboo Vegas and Fiery Vulcan. And of course, Aston Martin in third, not too far behind, and it's a fairly good gap, but a great battle there for fourth, with Haas sitting on 55 points, and then Red Bull, Ferrari, and AlphaTauri no more than 11 points adrift. Red Bull at 52, Ferrari at 50, and AlphaTauri at 44. So every race still very important as we begin to approach the halfway mark. Of course, 15-race season, so plenty of time for drivers to make jumps up the order. Let's see if I can catch anybody here on a lap. Of course, you got the Aston Martins looking for potentially a little bit of slipstream there. Of course, we'll go jump on board with Kevin Cal, who I believe is just starting his lap. So we'll have to keep an eye on that timing board in the top right of your screen as it comes to that first timing zone. He's up a second on his first lap time, so definitely a mistake from the Mercedes early on in that lap. So certainly pretty strong there out of the exit of turn 3 and that run down to turn 4 is, I believe that was Oreo African that was Speedy Gunner jumping up to 8th quickest, so a strong showing from the Red Bull. As Viperize out of the session, so the Mercedes making a mistake there at turn 1, and I think just going into the wall. So that will be it for Viperize, so he will start no better than third. So it's solid showing, at least on that first qualifying lap. But Kevin Cal, of course, here is going to have to make a pretty good improvement. I did miss that pop-up for the second timing marker, but certainly no significant mistakes from Kevin Cal. Here he comes out at turn number 10 and to the line. How fast can Kevin Cal go? He will jump above his teammate and up to third fastest. So good improvement there from the Mercedes, who currently sit 3 and 4. Zersity to the line, he will go 4th quickest, so Viper is now likely to continue to fall down the order a little bit. As you can see, the Red Bull of DN all breached there, slightly improving on his first sector, not by much. Let's see, Dodoligo and the Haas, he currently sits 12th, and he has an Alpine right behind him. He'll only improve to 10th quickest. I believe the Alpine behind him was Fiery Vulcan, who did not improve from P12. Let's see, there's a McLaren coming to the line now. There's Tommy XXC, who would be looking to, I believe, just start a lap. So we'll have to keep an eye on the McLaren, of course, without a lap time just yet. And then here's your provisional pole sitter of Bamboo Vegas. Of course, I think also just setting up to get ready to go, so keep an eye on his lap time. That could drop very, very quickly. Of course, Kevin Cal here on an in-lap. I believe that's a Red Bull of the Albridge. He improved by 0.2 of a second, so that would put him up level with Kevin Cal. But of course, after having invalidated earlier in that lap, he's not going to improve from P6 for the moment. I believe Haas should be next to come to line. That'll be KevProd, so fairly tidy out of that final corner. Though it looks like it's the same boat where KevProd is just going to be starting his push lap. Of course, Ferrari coming to the line. I believe that is Crooner, who will not improve, at least again for the moment. Mistake there, I believe, from Bamboo Vegas, potentially late. No, Bamboo Vegas actually matching almost exactly his first lap time. So can he pick up any time in the final sector? Of course, coming as Tommy XXC goes 7th quickest for McLaren, so just waiting for Kendricks to put a lap time on the board. Here comes Bamboo Vegas out of the final corner. Can he improve his provisional pole position? He does, and we see our first lap time into the 104s with a 104.984 from the Alpine car. So very strong from Bamboo Vegas, who's going to be looking to continue to increase that gap at the top. So again, strong start, but of course, 36 laps, so plenty of time for other drivers to make up, one of whom could be Crooner, who's about half a tenth up through those first two sectors, as you saw that briefly. Here he comes out of the final couple of corners. He's almost certainly going to improve. Can he pick up those 0.2 he needs? Not quite, as he's was it? Can you hear me now? I'm checking something. Alright, well, it sounds like I'm back. If I haven't been talking this whole time, I do very much apologize. But yeah, I guess if I wasn't here before, I'm here now. But of course, as I missed that, Zersity up into P4, so a solid showing. And some guy jumps up into P13, so solid showing there. Of course, if you are new to LSR, as I was going through this spiel, first of all, welcome. I don't know if my entire starting spiel got missed in those first 13 minutes of this qualifying session, but so I do apologize. That is a pretty massive mistake on my part. But it should be a very, very interesting session. Of course, going to have some very close battles throughout the races. We see Deanna Albridge pick up 2 seconds, or two. I believe 2/10 on his first lap time. Thank you, Rick, for letting me know. Those only about a minute or two there where I cut out. Very much appreciated. Thank you for pointing that out. But should be very interesting. Of course, if you are new, don't forget to subscribe down below and hit that bell so you can stay up to date whenever we go live if you're new, and if you're interested in potentially seeing yourself on track at some point, whether it is this season or once we get into the new game cycle for F1 23, which hopefully is at least better on the stability side, certainly go ahead and throw a message in chat below. Of course, we would love to have you no matter what experience level you're at. Currently sitting with 3 groups. Definitely looking and could look to get a 4th depending on interest. And you can, even if you don't want to race every week, we'd love to have you on either just in the Discord or as a reserve to jump in every once in a while. Of course, here comes the Red Bull and the McLaren of Deanna Albridge and Tommy XXC. So Tommy setting up to take the slipstream off of the Red Bull ahead of him. You saw them playing a little bit of games there in the run up to turn 9. Seems that McLaren's pretty quick here on this qualifying lap. Certainly could be held up by the Albrecht, who reached down early. Sadly did not switch over to Tommy's lap time to see if he improved at all. But of course DRS wide open at the back as they run down now into turn number 4. Going to want to drop down into about 3rd gear and really try and use as much curb on the outside as you can and get on the power nice and early as you make your way through Sector 2. Now is the run up into 6th. Here comes 7 and now there's turn 6. And as we reach the timing board, Breach is up a 10th. Tommy has backed off of this lap time. And Breach, Dan Albrecht spins round. So Dan Albrecht was up a 10th of a second, so potentially challenging for P4, but that's a big mistake there from the Red Bull car. Is going to mean that he loses that lap time. Of course, he's still going to have a chance to do another lap. But of course, up at the top currently, of course, we got Fedora on, I believe, just setting up to give his lap a go. But out on track right now is the Mercedes of Kevin Cal. Of course, Crooner and Bamboo Vegas are going to be making their way out of the pit lane shortly as we prepare for the last couple of runs of qualifying. Of course, yellow flag, I believe that's for just a slow, fiery Vulcan, potentially just out of fuel there. Let's jump over to the Alpine car. The Alpine is just out of fuel, so he'll just have to trundle around. Of course, cars piling out of the pit lane. Of course, Kevin pulling off to the side there. He's going to let a couple of cars pass to go ahead and get their lap times started. Of course, we're going to be wanting to keep it. We'll jump on board with Crooner, actually, who pulled ahead of Kevin. But, of course, he's got a Red Bull ahead of him. So Crooner, potentially with the advantage of slips for him now, he's going to want to take every opportunity as we just cross a minute and 20 seconds left to go in this qualifying session to go chasing after Bamboo Vegas. And, of course, Kevin Cal behind him is going to be wanting to do that same thing. And as they run up into this braking zone for turn 3, Crooner down almost a quarter of a second. As you might have noticed there, running out a little bit wide on the exit of turn 1 and getting up on that sausage curb, just really losing a lot of time there for the Ferrari. It's now under a minute left to go. And as they make their way through turn 4, it's nice to saw Crooner a little bit of a later apex there. So potentially some strategy coming in from the Ferrari outfit. And here they come through Sector 2 as they cross that board. It's a 10th and a half for Crooner that he's down on his previous lap time. So he's going to have to really either monster this final sector or try and carry that momentum into getting another lap in, because he will have a chance, and he goes very wide there, and he's just going to dive into the pit lane and abort that lap. Kevin Cal with a big mistake early in his lap, so he'll not improve from P3 unless he can get to the line with 15 seconds left to go. Tommy XXT, meanwhile, jumps up to 4th fastest, so a very solid showing for the McLaren. And, of course, Bamboo Vegas still out on track. He's starting his lap, and he's up a 10th of a second through the first 2 sectors now as he makes his way through turns number 7 and 8. 2 turns to go, and it looks like the Alpine going to increase that advantage at the front as qualifying is now over. Yellow flag up at turn 3. That might have been an incident between a McLaren and a Red Bull. Here comes Bamboo Vegas out of the final corner. Will his lap time jump in? He improves by an 1/8 of a second, so that gap increases up at the front. There's, I believe, a Williams next to the line. That's some guy who's invalidated. Meanwhile, an Alpha Tauri will be next. That is Fedora. He will not improve. He'll stay P8. I believe that's Dodoligo next to the line. He'll jump right behind his teammate into P10. The Alfa Romeo of Durso get to the line. He will sit in 5th place. Speedy Gunner and Oreo African, meanwhile, I believe after both making a mistake early on in that lap, both not going to improve, and as you can see them both dive into the pit lane, that Red Bull getting very aggressive there. But of course, that will be your starting grid. It will be Bamboo Vegas from Crooner and Kevin Cal, followed by Tommy with a very strong showing in 4th, as well as Zersity. Viperize, of course, after having only really one good run of things, will start 6th for Mercedes. So again, another very strong showing for Mercedes as they look to increase their advantage in the Constructors' Championship. And of course, as Kevin continues his charge for the Drivers' Championship. Of course, you got Ian Albrecht in 7th with Fedora in 8th. The Haas duo of Kevprod and Dodoligo then sit 9th and 10th. Speedy Gunner in 11th. Oreo Africa there in 12th. Which could certainly be interesting. Of course, there's your pole man in the Alpine of Bamboo Vegas. Of course, if you got any predictions for this race as we take a look at our starting group with Bamboo Vegas with a 2/10 advantage over Crooner. Certainly throw those predictions in chat as there is your starting grid. Of course, James at the back there, but definitely keep an eye on him to make some moves throughout the races. He's really made a habit of coming from the back of the grid and really just storming his way up into the front and picking up some really, really solid results. So we're going to have to wait and see, of course, how this race pans out, of course. So definitely throw any predictions you have in chat. Of course, we're not going to have no formation lap right now, so we'll be jumping right in to the race in 5 seconds here. So, of course, should be a one-stop race. Wouldn't be surprised to see potentially somebody getting ambitious if they would like to, and potentially could see a medium soft if some people are feeling up to it. But certainly going to have to keep an eye on that, because tire wear, not very much a factor. So would expect one-stops, mostly medium to hards, and expect the undercut to be very, very strong around this Red Bull Ring circuit. Of course, as you can see, the opposing pit crews all lined up. As we do have a prediction of a speedy Kevcal and Kendrick's podium, which certainly would be very interesting. But of course, turn 1 is going to decide a lot of things here. And of course, just 20 seconds left to go. Of course, if you haven't done so already, definitely go down and hit that like button, as you got about 15 seconds before this race starts. That would be very much appreciated. Of course, we're going to look to continue to grow and continue to bring you more and more league racing action. Even into Formula 1 2023 when that comes out. So, of course, going to be looking forward to that. But as for right now, we're just in Austria, and we have 5 lights and are underway here in Austria. As it seems that Crooner, with a solid getaway, much better getaway than Bamboo Vegas, he's well up the inside, and the Ferrari takes the lead into turn 1. The Red Bull of Deanne Albrecht goes into the back of Tommy XXC and loses his front wing as there's chaos, and scrambling down into turn 1, 4 wide behind, as you can see. A car scrambling for position here on lap 1. Bamboo Vegas looking to the inside now. He's going to have the advantage as they run into turn 1. Of course, Crooner going to have the outside line here as they run down into turn number 4, and the tire compound advantages. He's on those medium compound tires, which are going to be fired up slightly more quickly. And as they're even coming down into turn number 4, as you can see, an Alfa Romeo is Cersei running wide, and Bamboo Vegas and Crooner still side by side now as they make their way through turn 5. Can Crooner stick it out there? He will not until Bamboo Vegas holds the lead into turn number 6. And will retain the lead after losing it in that run up to turn 1. And yellow flag there, that is for a slow McLaren. That is Oreo African, who's kind of slow, but of course up at the front, just going to be keeping an eye on this battle. Of course, a little bit twitchy there is Some Guy and Tommy XSC, Zersity jumping up nicely. Is Some Guy out of the race? Some Guy is out as we have our first safety car of this race. Some Guy on his debut, just potentially making contact right there that just about got missed. But the Williams driver on his LSR debut, sadly, out of the Austrian Grand Prix. So disappointing there for sure. But a strong showing and I'm sure some strong battling early on there, and should be definitely one for the stewards' room. Of course, it gives us a chance to take a look at some of the tire strategies. Of course, you got most drivers opting for either the medium or the hard tires, but of course, you got Kendrick's there on the sauces. Tommy XXC as well. Tommy XXC has retired from the session, so I don't know if he was potentially involved with that incident with Some Guy, but he is now out of the race. So we've had our first 2 DNFs rather quickly here. Of course, it'll be interesting to see if any drivers opt to pit early on in this race. Of course, everybody likely to stay out, I would assume. And everybody stay out. Keep an eye on Kendrick's there, who does elect to stay out. Of course, the only driver to opt for the soft compound tire at the start of this race. So definitely keep an eye on him at the fiery Vulcan Oreo African, dive into the pit lane, so likely to fix a little bit of wing damage. You can see that wing being prepared by the McLaren pit crew, as that is a strange camera angle. But of course you can see that front wing being repaired there. the McLaren going to get back underway. Of course, going to come out behind Leanne Albrecht in the Red Bull you just saw zoom past. As Kevin Powell overtook Crooner there. I'm not sure that was a mistake from the Ferrari driver. So potentially a mistake there from the Ferrari allowed the Mercedes through. Unless that was a game bug, but definitely should be useful to take a look at position changes early on. Of course, Kevprod, a very big winner there, as was Kendrick. So a number of drivers gaining a number of places. Of course, Tommy XC being out after starting up in P4 is a big loser, as is Leanne Albrecht, who lost 8 spots. Dodoligo down 3, Zersity down 4. The other kind of big losers there, James up 7 places early, so already making moves in this Austrian Grand Prix. He sits 11th. The other big winner was Kendricks, who starting on those soft compound tires, jumped from 15th all the way up to P8, as is, and Kevprod as well in that Haas car with a strong showing early. So definitely keep an eye on those drivers here once we come up to the restart. So should get back underway on lap 4, because you can see a number of drivers just looking to keep temperature in those tires at this point, as we do have broadcast safety car turned on. So we'll get back underway even quicker here at the Red Bull Ring. Of course, as you're looking at P1 of Bamboo Vegas there. This should be interesting. Leanne Albrecht as well, a 5-second penalty. That was for speeding in the pit lane, so likely just not able to get Red Bull slowed down after suffering damage there on lap number 1, as we saw there a little bit into the background. I believe just taking a little bit too much heat into turn 1 and tagging the back of Zersity. Of course, Austria turn 1 definitely a magnet for incidents, just due to the nature of the corner. It's very challenging to get through there, especially in an online lobby, without having any incidents. But again, certainly going to be something that goes to the steward's office. Of course, we do have post-race stewards. The safety car will be ending this lap. And we're about to see that safety car pull away. Of course, Bamboo Vegas will have control of the pack right about now, I'd assume. As this is about strange. And there we go. There's the safety car in this lap message. Of course, there's Omega as well out of the session. So Omega just not paying attention, I think, and just going straight. So that's another confusing instance here, I guess. But of course, we will get back underway. It's going to be very interesting to see when the Alpine goes. Of course, he's going to want to floor it here out of this final corner. And as we get back underway, a solid jump there from the Alpine with about a 3/10 gap behind him as they run now up into turn 1. It seems that everybody looking to hold position here. A little look to the inside from the Red Bull, a Speedy Gunner on Fedora, and he gets that move done into turn 1, so a solid restart there. But up at the front, it's yellow flag in sector 1. That is a spun Haas of Dodoligo. So certainly going to be challenging there for him, as he's going to have to now recover back up the field. But it seems that Kevprod able to overtake Viperace as well, exit to turn 3, and as they're going to run side by side all the way down to turn 4, as the Haas looking to try and gain back any spots. Very tight there, almost some contact, but enough space is given there. Very nice racing. It seems that the Mercedes has the advantage for the moment, but of course Kevprod still going to keep it there as the AlphaTauris battle side by side behind him. Of course, still has the inside line, but once they get into 7 and 8, it is Viperize with the advantage. But of course, not out of the woods yet is the Mercedes. As here comes Kendricks on Speedy Gunner. He's going to look potentially for a move here into turns number 9 and 10, as those soft compound tires really working to the AlphaTauris' advantage. And as we continue here, it is going to be Bamboo Vegas that continues to lead. But I think a big mistake there, fairly significant mistake there, maybe from Speedy Gunner, as that gap up to about 7, opens up to about 7/10. Of course, no DRS assistance quite yet, so we'll have one more lap before we see that. But of course, Kendrick's going to be wanting to get past before that, before that's even an option. But his AlphaTauri teammate of Fedora is not going to waste any time. That seemed to be a very strong exit from his teammate. He's going to look to the inside on those hard compound tires and try to make a move on his teammate. And here comes the AlphaTauris side by side. Will Fedora make the move, stick on his teammate? A little bit of contact there. but it seems that they're going to continue to battle side by side now as they go into turn number 6, and it will be Kendrick still holding the advantage over his teammate here on lap number 7. It's Fedora with a 3-second time penalty already for track limits warnings, and I'm sure that's not the last penalty we'll see today, so definitely keep an eye on how those times rack up. Of course, DRS is going to be enabled this lap as Formula Jonah overtaken by Vian Albrecht, and we're also joined by Mega, so what's up? But of course, here on lap number 8, DRS now going to be activated, so Kevin Cal going to have that little bit more of an opportunity to go after Bamboo Vegas. Of course, got a little bit of a train starting, and as here we go, both AlphaTauris going to be looking to jump the Red Bull here up into turn 3. Speedy Gunner going to defend the inside. Here comes Kendricks around the outside, not going to quite have that move done yet. But of course, going to have a slightly better exit. Who has DRS? It is both Speedy Gunner and Fedora. So it seems that Kendricks is going to lose out to his teammate and the guy he was battling. And as they... And it will be Speedy Gunner able to defend after being able to steal DRS in that run down into turn 3. Meanwhile, back up at the front, it's about half a second between the two cars up at the front as Viperize as well receiving a time penalty. But here comes both the Mercedes and the Ferrari still right on Bamboo Vegas' heels. About a second separating the top 3 now. And of course, the 2 cars behind are going to have that advantage of DRS now. So as they run into turn 1, that gap is at about 6/10, and Crooner with the new fastest lap of this race. It's going to be very interesting to see how this gap increases. So it seems like Bamboo Vegas is just able to take a little bit more speed through turn 1, and potentially looking to utilize DRS a little bit more. Of course, that battery percentage is significantly lower on the Alpine, but the Ferrari right now has a really big ERS advantage over the cars behind. Of course, Bamboo Vegas with the advantage now, but of course, as that ERS continues to deplete, he'll have less and less opportunities as Kendrick's very wide there. So potentially an incident with his teammate. So was there AlphaTauri friendly fire? As we can see, Bud Fedora going very slowly there into turn 4. So potentially some contact between the AlphaTauris who we saw battling earlier. As Kendrick's now potentially with damage. He's under threat from James, who's going to go around the outside there. So a solid move as Fedora just seems to be parking up. So is that the race over for one of the 2 AlphaTauris? It might be. What is Fedora doing there? It seems that he's just gotten back. There's a reset the track there, so I don't know what quite happened, but it seems that he'll be back underway shortly. Meanwhile, back up at the front, Bamboo Vegas seemingly continuing to increase that lap here on lap number 10. It does seem that there was damage to Kendrick's AlphaTauri's heat boxes now. So potential frustrations there on the AlphaTauri pit wall of just friendly fire and miscommunication there. Resulting in a horror show for the 2 of them. But of course, going to keep an eye on this battle here at the front. Bamboo Vegas seemingly able to lap consistently up here at the front for Alpine, as Omega is out, has left the session now after having that kind of train crash right before we got back underway. Of course, you're just joining us. Welcome. I've certainly seen a number of new faces enter the chat and that viewer number pop up. I hope you've enjoyed thus far. Of course, this is going to be a bit of a quicker race here today. So we can see here comes the cars into turn number 1, and that gap's still at about half a second. So Bamboo Vegas able to monitor that gap very nicely. As you can see, Fedora there being lapped already after I believe having to box due to damage. So certainly going to be a very, very poor day for AlphaTauri, and they're going to be hoping for a safety car to improve them. As a mistake there from Bamboo Vegas is going to put him under threat from Kevin Cal. So I think a big twitch there from the Alpine early on in that lap potentially could bring Kevin Cal into range to get a good fight in on him. Sadly, Alexis B is just joining a little bit too late for this race, so sad to see him miss out. Of course, here we go. As we make our way through the third and final sector, Bamboo Vegas just increasing that gap a little bit more. So those hard tires potentially just being that they've gotten fired up. So the Alpine might have a chance to now pull away just that little bit from Kevin Cal and just keep him at arm's reach. So once we get to that pit stop phase, he'll have a good advantage. Just a little bit wide there from Bamboo Vegas, so of course that's almost certainly going to be a track limits penalty. Of course, you can see the ghost AlphaTauri of Fedora there in the background. He's just going to be there just trying to get himself unlapped as they make their way in Crooner. Did Kevin Cal make a mistake there? I believe Kevin Cal made some sort of there was an error there from Kevin Cal, so potentially just getting on the power, or just running a little bit wide there. So a mistake from the Mercedes means he drops down into third, and that gap now from Bamboo Vegas back to Crooner is now at 2 seconds. So will Bamboo Vegas try to now stretch his legs and really try to make a getaway there at the front now that there is that big advantage? You can now see that Alpine wanting to disappear off likely into the distance. So definitely going to be important to keep an eye on that gap. Of course, here we've got a battle for fourth going on between Viperize and KevProd. Of course, a very similar battle, I believe, to how we've seen Bamboo Vegas and Crooner battle. As Crooner, I believe, letting Kevin Cal back through. So I think the Ferrari just went a little bit deep there in the turn 3 and probably just tagged the Mercedes, but of course, letting him back through there. So good showing of sportsmanship. Of course, as they break down in turn 3, probably not going to look to overtake this lap. Is yellow flag in sector 1. That is for a slow AlphaTauri that has made a mistake. I don't believe that is Fedora, just slow there, letting everybody through, respecting those blue flags. Of course, it is Bamboo Vegas with a sizable advantage, as you can see there. Of course, Viperize and KevProd now battling side by side as they make the run down into turn number 6. Will be still with a slight advantage. But again, it's kind of inverse of the battle we're seeing at the front, so that that Haas on those hard-coming tires as the Albrecht and James battle. James going to be looking to hold it around the outside here as they make their way through turn 7 and 8, and that's a nice move there. Martin, who's jumped up into P8 after starting P18 in this race, so solid showing there from James. But of course, taking a look up at the front, the gap now to 3 seconds up at the front is yellow flags. That is for that same AlphaTauri, if I'm not mistaken. But certainly going to be interesting, and going to keep an eye on that. Of course, got a fairly close battle. A little bit of a mistake there from the Alfa Romeo of Xercity, which is going to allow Speedy Gunner to potentially close up on him. As you can see, Dan Albrecht looking to now make a move on James. He's going to look to the inside as they go into the braking zone of turn 3. As we do see Kendricks diving into the pit lane, so potentially just with damage there. So again, just bad to worse for the AlphaTauri unit as their day just continues to get worse and worse. Meanwhile, in the battle for second, here comes, as you can see, Crooner still right on the back of Kevin. But still not quite able to find a way past, and this is all going to work to the advantage of Bamboo Vegas for Alpine, as that gap now up to 3 seconds as we really get close to that pit stop phase. So I'd expect to see cars diving into the pit lane off of those medium compound tires in the very near future here as they come out of the final corner. As you can see, also the Mercedes and Haas dueling Viperize and KevProd behind. So here they go through turn 1, that gap sitting at about 0.4 of a second right now. Very good, seemingly very strong exit there from Crooner. Here he comes. Of course, DRS going to be wide open, and so much DRS on that Ferrari that he's going to have a big advantage. Going to take a peek to the inside, but not going to quite make that move stick right now. Is the move going to be on now down into turn 4? Of course, there's the deployment from the Ferrari. He's going to look to the outside now as they continue to run. Crooner with the advantage and more than a length gap, and he'll take P2. Of course, he's not going to be, again, completely out of danger yet. As yellow flag there, I believe that was James and Vulcan making contact, maybe, down into turn number 3. Of course, Vulcan going to be looking down the inside. And of course, you can see the Aston Martins there battling, but I think James of course, James and Jonah are going to be battling side by side there as Dan Albrecht receives a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Of course, that gap at about 3.5 seconds now after that battle, and of course, Crooner are going to have plenty of ERS to potentially try and close that gap and potentially get a nice little undercut work in here on lap number 16. Of course, that gap back to Kevin now continuing to open up to close to a second as battles around the grid, starting to spread out just a little bit as we approach the pit stop phase. Of course, you're just joining us. Bamboo Vegas, after a brief battle with Crooner, has kind of held the lead since lap 1 and leading from pole position. We're seeing a couple of nice battles, and as Crooner really stretching that gap up at the front. So Ferrari now going to be looking to pull away, as that gap now already down to 3.1 seconds. As Crooner really utilizing that ERS to try to make a move back. Of course, the Red Bulls battling, and it's the Albrecht ahead of Speedy Gunner by a length as they get into the braking zone for turn number 4. So again, they're going to be looking to try and pull away. Of course, Fiery Vulcan now going to be defending from James, who I believe the two may have had an incident earlier, just into that hard braking zone of turn number 3. But it is Bamboo Vegas continuing to lead the way by 3 seconds over Crooner's Ferrari, as James as well is the next to receive a 3-second time penalty for track limits as we hit lap 17. So should be approaching that pit stop phase very, very shortly now. As you can see that Ferrari there in the background, but I think that Alpine is just rapid in a straight line. As you can see that gap going up by 0.3 in that first sector. Here comes Kevprod on Viperize. He's going to look to the outside now of turn 3, going to look to pin that Mercedes maybe to the inside, not going to quite have the move. And that's a very strong exit there from Viperize's Mercedes. And so he'll be able to get the power down and continue to defend into turn 4. So he'll hold P4 right now, acting as potentially a nice little rear gunner for his teammate. Of course, Mercedes with a very strong showing already today. Of course, sitting P3 and 4 right now. Of course, our Constructors' Championship leaders are going to be looking to continue to stretch their advantage as we approach the halfway point. But again, plenty of points still left to come, and here comes Kevin Cal diving into the pit lane. So here comes the Mercedes, going to be potentially looking to try and make that undercut work. So he'll come and will be the first in race conditions without damage to be seen diving into the pit lane. Of course, going to be swapping onto those white-walled hard compound tires, likely as well as, I believe that's Formula Jonah diving into the pit lane as well. So definitely keep an eye on those lap times and how much they continue to drop. And of course, Kevin will pop out in 11th place. Of course, James as well was able to overtake Fiery Vulcan. But meanwhile, Bamboo Vegas, 3.5 seconds is that gap. But Bamboo Vegas does now have 3 seconds of time penalties. As we look at some of those time penalties, we've got Bamboo Vegas and Viperize with 3 seconds. Zercity with 6. Van Albrecht with 8. Of course, he'll serve 5 of those when he comes into the pit lane that next time round. And then a number of other drivers with some penalties already on the board. Of course, switching back to that tire graphic. Of course, both of the leaders electing to stay out for right now, as Viperize as well elects to dive into the pit lane here on lap number 19. Of course, he's going to brake and come in. So both Mercedes now will have pitted. That, of course, promotes Kevprod up into 3rd. Yellow flag in sector 3, that's our spun Alpha Tauri, who's now slow and getting back up to the pace. Of course, that's Fedora. Viperize, James elects to stay out. The Albrecht as well will jump into the pit lane and serve that 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane earlier in the race, and will also replace the front wing, so potentially a mistake there from leaving that setting on. But of course, Breach will come out now in P11, as Fedora now will retire from this race. Of course, the AlphaTauri is really, really struggling today, as Albrecht will come out in 13th. But I think those hards really with a big advantage now here on lap number 19, as Bamboo Vegas able to increase that gap by about a second back to Crooner, as that gap now sits at 4 seconds. So the Alpine, I think, really just looking to lay that hammer down, as the Ferrari does elect to come into the pit lane this lap. So let's keep an eye on that gap between Crooner and both Kevin Cal and Viperize, the Mercedes duo, as one of them made a mistake as Viperize off the track. As you can see there, at I believe that's turn number 6, is Zercity as well with a 5-second time penalty. So that's a crucial mistake from the Alfa Romeo. Here comes the Ferrari out of the pit lane. The Mercedes, of course, coming down. Here they come, and as they come out, it will be the Ferrari still with the advantage, but just about. He'll be battling with James as they run side by side up the hill, and it will be James with the advantage for the moment. And as they brake now hard into For number 3, it will be Crooner rather with the inside line, but of course James really just pushing him seemingly there. But it seems that the Ferrari is going to hold the advantage for now. Here comes James up the inside of Crooner. He's going to look to make a move now as a little bit of contact there between the Aston Martin and the Ferrari. And they're still going to stay side by side. And it's going to be Crooner now with the advantages. Those tires really come into the temperature that he likely wanted them to. And of course he can work to close that gap to Bamboo Vegas up at the front. It's going to be looking to continue to improve now. Of course, Bamboo Vegas now with about a 10.5 second gap back to Kev Prod, but definitely keep an eye ultimately on the gap between Bamboo Vegas and Crooner, as we still have a number of drivers left to pit in this race. One of them, of course, being your leader of Bamboo Vegas. Of course, the undercut going to be rather strong around this Red Bull ring. Would expect this undercut to be rather strong as Dean Albrecht puts in a fastest lap of the race so far. Of course, that time likely to continue to fall as we get into the latter stages of this race. So let's see how, and Bamboo Vegas will elect to go another lap on these tires. So seemingly able to continue to keep that gap at about 21 seconds between himself and Crooner, as the gap to Kevprod increasing rather dramatically, as again the pack has started to get spread out a little bit. But we'll certainly have to see how this race continues to unfold. Of course, James now diving into the pit lane, so the Aston Martin going to get that slowed down right there. So here he comes now in the pit lane. He's going to dive in. But to get, again, let's look to swap over to those medium compound tires, and as he comes out, he'll likely come out very close to that battle his teammate is in with Dodo Ligo. Of course, he'll have a tire advantage. So, of course, he's released now to go. Of course, you should be able to see his Aston Martin teammate coming up here very shortly. But it seems that James not going to have an advantage in terms of drive, but is going to be able to slot in comfortably behind his teammate. And now likely a little bit of teamwork going to be happening there for the Aston Martins, as they're likely to. I'd be very surprised to not see them swap places here shortly. Of course, DRS wide open there, but definitely keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, up at the front, Bamboo Vegas still elects to stay out as Kev Prod is the next to dive into the pit lane for a new set of tires. Run up into T3 now for Bamboo Vegas. Of course, that'll bump Oreo African up. Of course, Crooner looking to make a move. Now, before even getting into Turn 1, he's got an advantage of about a car length, and by the time they get into the braking zone for Turn number 1, Crooner is comfortably ahead of the McLaren of Oreo African. But, of course, not completely out of the woods yet, as the McLaren will have 2 helpings of DRS now, as that gap between Crooner and Bamboo Vegas, you can now see, is at 21.7 seconds. So now we can see exactly how big that gap is between the 2 cars that are likely to be fighting for the victory, for the win here around Austria. Will Bamboo Vegas elect to come into the pit lane this lap? It looks like he will. So we'll keep an eye on that delta as they come through. Of course, here comes the Alpine diving into the pit lane. You know, the Ferrari just coming through into Sector 3 now. Of course, he's clear of Oreo Africa, and that gap at 21.5 seconds. Here comes the Alpine into the pit lane. Good stop there from that pit crew. Here comes the Alpine out of the pit lane, and that gap should be comfortable there. As you can see, the Ferrari just coming out of the final corner now, and it should still be Bamboo Vegas fairly comfortably, and it will be. So as he comes out, that gap, certainly not out of the woods yet, as that gap down to about 3 seconds, so still very close between the 2 drivers, of course, after that penalty. But certainly gives Crooner something to fight for, and that battle not astronomically far off, but certainly close to see. Of course, we're going to have a battle here for 9th as Formula Jonah, likely looking to defend from Dodo Ligo and Dean Albrecht behind. It seems that Aston Martin running a little bit wide there at Turn 1 could open him up to an opportunity from the Haas, though particularly in the run down into turn 4. Of course, that gap at about half a second, though it seems Jonah is going to be able to keep it under control nicely. And as I get into the braking zone for turn number 4, it is still Jonah sitting in P9, so definitely keep an eye on that battle as this race continues. Of course, up at the front, the gap technically 1/10 between Bamboo Vegas and Crooner after we apply penalties. But of course, Bamboo Vegas on the medium compound of tire, going to be looking to really take advantage of the fresh set of tires. Of course, got Oreo African. Bit of a surprise there, sitting third for McLaren after pitting very early on in this race as James sets a new fastest lap for Aston Martin. As Van Albrecht and Dodoligo swap spots before getting into turn 1, and Speedy Gunner is the next recipient of a time penalty. Of course, let's definitely take a second to take a look at penalties. Of course, Xerxity with 11 seconds, going to have to really try and pull a gap to those cars behind him. Of course, Speedy Gunner on 6 seconds and James on 3 seconds, so certainly gives them an opportunity. It so gives both Xerxity an opportunity to hold that P6, as well as Speedy and James the opportunity to continue to push on ahead. Of course, the race certainly not, I wouldn't say far from over, as Bamboo Vegas sets a new fastest lap as we cross 11 laps to go. Of course, very quick laps here around the circuit as Kevin Cow and Oreo African swap spots before they get into turn 1. But of course, it's definitely worth taking a look at some of the big winners so far in this race. Of course, Oreo African gaining 8 positions so far in this race, and Kev Prod, the Haas behind him, gaining 4. James gaining 10 positions out on track for Aston Martin. Again, he's very much made a habit of making these drives from the back of the grid, and has just done very, very well to really boost his pace. Of course, purple sector 1 there, so certainly going to be chasing after that fastest lap point and fighting there with Bamboo Vegas. But even if the Aston Martin potentially doesn't really have that comfort and level of control during qualifying, just that race pace that the Aston Martin shows is very, very admirable. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see how the rest of his season goes. Of course, up at the front of the gap now, up to 4.8 seconds. And I forgot how to do that for a second, but all good. So Bamboo Vegas likely to just be in full-on race management mode as that gap now up to 5 seconds. So those medium tires proving a very crucial advantage over the hards of Crooner behind. But definitely going to be interesting to see how a lot of these battles continue. Of course, a lot of cars seemingly just not quite able to find a way past, as a lot of the cars leading some of these trains are just good enough and comfortable enough in a lot of the important areas. So for instance, traction out of turn 3, that they're just able to hold the advantage. Of course, that gap closing between Formula Jonah and Dodoligo. Of course, the Haas going to be looking to have a traction advantage there, but just not quite able to get the power down comfortably enough. Like losing about 3/10 there on exit. The Haas taking a peek to the inside, but just not quite able to find a way into that last point scoring position. Of course, going to definitely have a couple of nice battles. Of course, lap 28 here should be rather quick. Of course, rather quick race in the absence of safety cars. There's a Haas slow there. This Dodoligo going to be under threat from Viperize's McLaren, who's going to make a sweeping move around the outside into turn 9. So a very nice move there from Viperize, who's now going to be able to take his shot at stealing a point from Formula Jonah and the Aston Martin team. Of course, every point matters in this championship. So it's going to be very important to see how that battle continues. Definitely keep an eye on the gap between Formula Jonah and Viperize as this continues. Of course, James now going to be looking to make a move here on Speedy Gunner. He's going to look to the outside, and the Aston Martin just blisteringly quick, especially in these race conditions and on those medium compound tires, and is going to be easily past Speedy Gunner, especially once they get into turn number 4, and is going to be now have the chance to go chasing off after Xerxity and try and steal away a P6. of course, in terms of potential drive of the day outside of what the game will give, I think Oreo Hafrigan certainly deserves to be in the question. Of course, managing, I almost said managing those hard compound tires quite well, but a pretty big twitch there out of turn 1 from the McLaren. But of course, he currently sits P4 and drove a fairly quiet race, but a very solid race for the McLaren team that failed to score points really until the sprint round in Portugal. So again, very strong showing from Oreo. Of course, looking to make up as many points as he can, especially for McLaren after his teammate Tommy XXC was out of the race very early. As Viperize able to get a move done on Formula Jonah by the time they get down into turn 3. But of course, Jonah going to have the assistance of DRS now. He's going to look around the outside, and he's going to have a nice little advantage and a great drive out of turn 3, and he's going to be able to defend that P10 here on lap 29 from Viperize. As Oreo Hafrigan dives into the pit lane, which is very surprising. So the McLaren, who I was just praising for really doing all he could to manage those hard compound tires, is going to box this lap. I believe those are probably for a fresh set of softs. So he will. He's going to drop down to, I believe, very close to that battle between Jonah and Viperize, of course, who are going to be close together again as they come out of the pit lane. But I'm surprised Oreo Hafrigan didn't elect to just stay out there on those hard compound tires. Of course, here comes Viperize on Jonah. Of course, he's going to have that peek to the inside. As you can see, that Mercedes taking a peek there. Not going to make a move quite yet. He's going to hold back after being re-overtaken into turn 4 on the last lap. Of course, but Formula Jonah with a great little exit there. Good afternoon, Kaz. Hope you're doing well. Of course, here on lap 31 now, Bama Vegas leading. Hopefully you can still hear me, but I just kind of bumped my mic. I was a little bit there as Viperize with a big mistake, so that's pretty much going to result in him falling out of contention for the points. So sadly, that's a very disappointing there, as yellow flag will be up in sectors 2 and 3. There's a Red Bull. A Red Bull is round as well. That's Leon Albrecht. He's going to drop well down the order. So he's dropped into P9 after a rather significant mistake. So 2 mistakes very, very quickly back-to-back here late on in this race. This driver's potentially struggling maybe with tire temps on some of these cars, which could be a surprise. But of course, got 6 laps to go, 5 when we cross the line next time round. But it seems that everybody able to get back underway, as you know, Formula Jonah will be right on the back of the end Albrecht. So the Aston Martin team potentially looking to get even some more points than they otherwise might have been able to. But it is still Bamboo Vegas fairly comfortably leading the way. Of course, we will have Group 3 racing later today, either right after Group 2 wraps up or a little bit later tonight. I definitely expect them to go live before 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Of course, with daylight savings, that is GMT, I believe, +4. So definitely do your conversions as you need to there. But definitely going to have more racing tonight. Of course, if you want to see some TR Premier Division, of course, they ran yesterday, so definitely head over to the live tab and give that video a watch if you have the opportunity to. Of course, commentated by Formula Jonah, who sits P10. Certainly a great commentator, and I think even better than me, so definitely worth giving that race a watch. And again, definitely stay tuned for Group 3 racing later on today, once again here at Austria. And of course, Bama Vegas still rather comfortable there. Of course, going to start lap 23. But no very close battles out on track. Seems that everybody really kind of spreading out into their own pace. Of course, you got Bama Vegas just kind of continuing to keep it nice and solid and consistent. Of course, going to be keeping an eye on the gap between James and Zersity. Of course, Zersity with a number of penalties, so definitely worth taking a brief update on that penalty chart. And that is the wrong one. So there we go. So, of course, Xerxes with 11 seconds of penalties after that speeding in the pit lane, so he's going to have to pull out a 5-second gap to both James and Speedy Gunner, both with 6 seconds. Oreo African could be the big winner here in the McLaren. Of course, could recover nicely back up into that P5 position after pitting for soft compound tires. Here comes Oreo on Speedy Gunner. Actually, he's going to look around the outside, and as they get into the braking zone, is going to be the McLaren briefly with the advantage, but the Red Bull taking the inside, potential switchback there. Opportunity for Oreo, but that door just going to be shut by Speedy Gunner, who's going to continue to hold down P7 for the moment. It's going to be very interesting to see how this battle for P5 continues. Of course, Oreo right all over the back of the Red Bull. As James receives another 3-second time penalty, so now he's under threat of losing even more positions as that penalty time goes up to 9 seconds. Of course, 3 laps to go now, so not going to be too long before we see the outcome. Of course, here comes the McLaren of Oreo Hafkin once again. He's going to look in the outside, look inside for that kink of turn 2. Of course, going to have the outside here for turn 3, so going to have the advantage of tires. Not going to slot in behind the Red Bull, but he's not going to have DRS. That's actually going to go to Speedy Gunner because he was behind once they got to the detection point. So Oreo looking to the inside there, going to try to the outside, but Speedy able to continue to defend that P7, and they're going to continue to lose time to James and Xerxes ahead. Of course, Oreo looking around the outside of the Red Bull now as they battle side by side, very close, very dicey there. As here comes McLaren on the outside of turn 7, just still not quite able to get a move done there. So Speedy just continuing to defend from Oreo's McLaren, potentially losing the shot at netting himself P5 or netting himself a position above James or Xerxes as they continue to lose time to those cars ahead. Of course, 2 laps to go. There's the McLaren looking to the inside of turn 1, all over that sausage curve to the inside. He's going to lose loads of time. He's going to be under threat now from the Albrecht, who's looking up the inside. So it's the Red Bull now with the advantage. Just that McLaren got a terrible run through turn 1, just looking to get that move done. Of course, again, still with the advantage of no time penalties. It's certainly going to be interesting to see here how this battle ends up carrying on. Of course, he's going to look to the outside now, but again, that Red Bull, I think, just continuing to defend. Of course, he's going to look to stick it around the outside, but not quite able to get that done. So even on those soft compound tires, Oreo Hafkin just really struggling to get overtakes done. As we are on to the final lap of this Austrian Grand Prix, but it's just really been a comfortable drive here from Bamboo Vegas. There's Oreo Hafkin actually with a mistake there. So a big mistake from the McLaren is going to drop him well out of the points, and after running very strongly, it's going to end up as likely a disappointing day for Oreo. But of course, Bamboo Vegas very comfortably led in the opening stages and just made that right call on strategy and has led from very early on. Of course, that gap up to 10 seconds now as some weird swapping of the order. Hopefully that's not due to somebody crashing, but it seems to be okay. It seems that the order has stabilized. But of course, here comes Bamboo Vegas down through turns number 9 and 10. Just 2 corners to go to keep it under control. And it will be Bamboo Vegas winning the Austrian Grand Prix here in Group 2. Very dominant showing, and congratulations to Bamboo on that win. Of course, coming in P2, here comes Crooner to the line, so it will be a French 1-2. Kevin Cal, with another strong showing for Mercedes, will wrap up the podium in 3rd. Kev Prod, with a very strong showing for Haas, will now finish P4. And now here comes the rather interesting and math portion of the race. As Xerxes comes to the line, he'll finish P5 on track, but it's going to be very interesting to see where his penalties end up with him. James will jump in, so it's currently James in 5th. Here comes Breach and Speedy to the line. Breach will jump up into 6th. Speedy will not be able to jump Xerxes, so it will. And Jonah, James and Jonah in 5 and 6. So penalties really punishing the Albrecht, Xerxes, and Speedy Gunner. So it's an Aston Martin 5-6. So that's a great showing for that pairing. Dodo Ligo running 30 laps on a set of medium compound tires will round out the points. Oreo Hafkin, after a late mistake there, will finish 11th. with Fiery Vulcan in 12th. Of course, you got Viperize there in 13th, and Kendrick's going to be coming out of the final corner to the line. He will finish 14th, and there he is to the line. So that is your race, as the AlphaTauri there actually out of fuel as he crossed the line, but certainly a great race. Again, driver of the day goes to James, of course, after starting last in that race, but a very strong showing there. Of course, you can see the Alpine driver coming down that tunnel. Of course, sadly, once again, I do have to dash. Sadly, not going to have podium interviews today, but of course, congratulations to the Alpine, Ferrari, and Mercedes teams on their showings. As you can see, that Alpine team is celebrating there along the pit lane. But of course, thank you for joining here for the Austrian Grand Prix in Group 2. Again, definitely stay tuned, as we will have Group 3 action in just a little while. But of course, definitely make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. But of course, here is your final order, and it is Bamboo Vegas taking both the win and the fastest lap. And you're from Crooner and Kevin Cal. So the top 3 in qualifying is your top 3 in the race, as they all held position. Kevprod then finishes 4th for Haas, as James nets driver of the day after starting from last, ends up in P5, with Formula Jonah in P6 after really having a very nice and clean drive and really benefiting from a lot of the penalties scored by other drivers. The Ukrainian Avian Albrecht finishes 7th for Red Bull, with Zersity in P8. The Canadian, a speedy gunner, finishes P9, and in the points and running out the points is the Swede of Dodoligo. Oreo Hafrigan just outside the points in 11th after a strong drive early. 12th is Fiery Vulcan, followed by Kendrick's Viperize, and then your DNS are Fedora, Omega, Tommy, and some guys. So, of course, thank you for joining. It's been great to have you, and hopefully we'll see you next weekend for the Singapore Grand Prix for all our groups. But, of course, thank you for joining as always. Been Vic and Haddock, and it's been a pleasure to have you here. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll be seeing you all later. Have a good